The recent U.S. intervention in Venezuela under President Trump has sent shockwaves through the international community, and for Canada, it has become a catalyst for deep reflection. This event has forced Canada to fundamentally rethink its foreign and defense policy, challenging long-held assumptions about its closest ally and the global order it has relied upon for decades. Ottawa's response is more than a simple reaction to unfolding events. It represents a deliberate and strategic shift. This is a signal to the world that Canada is entering a new era of sovereignty, one where it must assert its own interests and values more forcefully on the global stage. For generations, Canada has relied on a stable and predictable United States to uphold international norms and provide a sense of security. The partnership was built on trust, shared values, and a mutual commitment to the rules-based order. But now, that foundational assumption has been shattered. The unpredictability of U.S. actions has left Canada facing a world where old certainties no longer apply. Canada's reaction is not just a diplomatic maneuver, it is a true test of its ability to navigate a rapidly changing world, where alliances are increasingly transactional and power dynamics are shifting. The stakes are high, and Canada must adapt to protect its interests. By doubling down on international law, strengthening both traditional and new alliances, and conducting a thorough review of its defense posture, Canada is crafting a forward-looking blueprint. This approach is not only for its own security, but also serves as a model for other middle powers seeking stability in an unpredictable era. This is truly a defining moment in Canadian history. Future historians may well look back on this period as the point when Canada decisively charted a more independent and assertive course, stepping out of the shadow of its southern neighbor. The government's resolve is unmistakable. The invasion of Venezuela marks the emergence of a new American doctrine, and Canada is determined to defend not only its own interests, but also the broader rules-based international order that has underpinned global peace for decades. Ottawa's quiet determination sends a powerful message to the world. Canadian sovereignty is not negotiable. In this uncertain time, Canada stands ready to shape its own destiny and uphold the principles it holds dear. The U.S. justified its intervention in Venezuela as a mission to restore democracy, but President Trump's rhetoric has revealed a broader ambition: regional dominance. He's dismissed multilateralism, sidelined allies like Canada, and invoked a modern Monroe Doctrine, positioning the U.S. as the sole arbiter in the Americas. For Canada, this is not a limited police action but a full-scale invasion that upends years of collaborative diplomacy. The Trump administration's approach signals that any nation in the hemisphere could be targeted if it opposes U.S. interests. Ottawa now sees Venezuela as the first test of a new, assertive doctrine, one that prioritizes American power above all else. This shift has created a new and unsettling security environment for Canada. Canada is recalibrating its security posture, no longer assuming the U.S. will always act as a benign guarantor. Defense planners now see American unilateralism as a potential threat to Canadian sovereignty. The focus has shifted to continental defense, Arctic security, and reducing economic dependencies on the U.S. Ottawa is also strengthening ties with other allies, building a coalition committed to a rules-based order. Economic resilience is now a national security priority, with efforts to onshore production and diversify supply chains. Canada's whole-of-government approach reflects a new era of strategic independence. The Monroe Doctrine, first articulated in 1823, was originally intended to deter European colonial ambitions in the Western Hemisphere and to protect the newly independent nations of the Americas. Over time, however, its meaning has shifted. In recent years, President Trump has revived the doctrine, not as a shield, but as a tool for asserting U.S. dominance and influence throughout the Americas. This modern reinterpretation marks a significant departure from its original defensive posture, transforming it into a justification for intervention and control. For Canada, this aggressive shift is deeply troubling. It signals that even sovereign democratic nations like Canada could be pressured to align with U.S. interests, or face the threat of political, economic, or even military intervention. The message is clear: independence is conditional, and dissent may not be tolerated. Canadian policymakers are acutely aware that doctrines once established can be invoked to justify future actions against any nation, regardless of its relationship with the United States. History has shown that such policies can have far-reaching and unintended consequences, making vigilance essential. Ottawa's opposition to the U.S.-led intervention in Venezuela is about more than just that specific conflict. It represents a broader rejection of the idea that national sovereignty is conditional, or negotiable. Canada is standing up for the principle that all nations, regardless of size or power, deserve respect for their independence. By invoking international law and the principles enshrined in the UN Charter, Canada is directly challenging the legitimacy of a US-dominated hemisphere. This stance is not just symbolic, it is a call for a rules-based international order where power does not override principle. This is a strategic stand for the future, grounded in the hard-won lessons of history. Canada understands that defending sovereignty today helps secure it for generations to come. Canada is determined to reinforce the international norms and alliances that protect its independence, ensuring that its voice remains strong and respected on the world stage. Ottawa views the Venezuelan invasion as a precedent-setting event that threatens the global order. If the US can disregard sovereignty so easily, it signals to other powers that similar actions may be tolerated. For Canada, this undermines decades of rules-based conduct and introduces unpredictability into its relationship with the US-Canadian strategists. Now consider scenarios where the US could use coercion over issues like Arctic sovereignty or trade. Canada's response is to challenge this precedent, refusing to legitimize the US action and reinforcing its commitment to international law. The goal: ensure the invasion is seen as an aberration, not the new normal. Canada is working to firewall the crisis from becoming a template for future interventions. Canada's security apparatus is analyzing Trump's rhetoric as deliberate signals of a new coercive US doctrine. Vague justifications for intervention, like vital economic interests, are seen as dangerously elastic, potentially applicable to Canada in future disputes. The alliance is no longer a partnership of equals. Washington now demands compliance, not collaboration. Canada is recalibrating its communications, firm, principled, but measured, to assert its independence without escalating tensions. Public statements avoid personal criticism, but make clear Canada's opposition to unilateral action. Ottawa's message: Canada is not a subordinate, but an independent nation acting on its own principles. This strategic clarity is reshaping the relationship for the long term. Canada's era of strategic complacency is over. The Venezuelan crisis has forced a shift from assumed safety to proactive readiness, with a renewed focus on defending Canadian territory and sovereignty. Modernizing NORAD now means ensuring it serves Canadian interests, not just continental defense. The armed forces are prioritizing surveillance, Arctic presence, and the ability to deter coercion. The psychological shift is profound. Canada now sees itself as the primary agent of its own defense. This new mindset of self-reliance is driving long-term preparations. Canada is moving from dependence to responsible sovereignty. Canada's response to geopolitical upheaval is calm, methodical, and focused on long-term strength. Diplomats are reinforcing alliances with G7, Commonwealth, and EU partners, not to oppose the US, but to uphold the international system. The military is reviewing doctrine, readiness, and investing in intelligence, cyber defense, and Arctic surveillance. Economic security is a new pillar. Task forces are mapping supply chains and reducing over-reliance on the US. These steps are taken quietly, avoiding provocation, but with steely resolve. Canada is fortifying its foundations to protect its interests, whatever the future brings. This is a strategy of prudence, not panic. The Venezuelan crisis exposes a stark divide in global politics, one that pits two fundamentally different approaches against each other. On one side, Canada stands as a vocal champion of multilateralism and the principles of international law, believing that global challenges require collective solutions and shared responsibility. In sharp contrast, the Trump administration has embraced a strategy of unilateral power, acting independently and often disregarding the input or consent of other nations. Canada's insistence on securing a United Nations mandate and working through international coalitions is more than just diplomatic protocol. It's a deliberate defense of the rules-based order that has underpinned decades of global stability, peace, and cooperation. The US approach, acting without the backing of allies or established legal authority, signals a dangerous return to the old logic of might makes right, where power, rather than principle, determines outcomes. Ottawa's opposition to this approach is not just about the immediate crisis in Venezuela, it's about upholding a broader vision for how the world should work, a vision where rules, dialogue, and cooperation matter more than brute force. By defending multilateralism, Canada is advocating for a world order that benefits all nations, large and small, and ensures that even middle powers have a voice in shaping global affairs. Canada's strategy is to highlight its legitimacy and commitment to partnership, setting itself apart from Washington's more confrontational, power-driven politics. This contrast is not just symbolic, it's a calculated effort to show that influence can be built on trust and cooperation, not just military or economic might. For a middle power like Canada, long-term security and prosperity depend on a stable, predictable international system where agreements are respected and disputes are resolved peacefully. In the end, Canada's quiet but unwavering stand is a defense of that system, and a clear rejection of the unilateralist path that threatens to undermine the very foundations of global order.